Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that I see as a common problem for people with perfectionist habits, and certainly something I've struggled with, and that is perseverating. So I needed to look up the definition for perseverating, and what I found was this: to repeat or prolong an action, thought, or utterance after the stimulus that prompted it has ceased. What immediately comes to mind with this definition for me is those times when we replay some event or interaction that we've had, over and over again in our minds, wishing we had said something different, or, wondering what the other person meant, or, maybe we receive some feedback or criticism and we just get kind of stuck in it. That, of course, is a common problem that many perfectionists and people pleasers face, but we're going to focus today actually on a different type of perseverating, which is perseverating on a decision. So I'm wondering how many of you right now have an important decision that you have been putting off? And if you're raising your hand right now, how long have you been putting off that decision? I know for me, sometimes I've waited years to make a decision. I have continued to think over and over and over again about the same problem, but just didn't take any action to move forward. Always kind of pushing it off, thinking, not now. But, really that wasn't very helpful. I'm not talking about small decisions, about like what to have for lunch, but questions that are bigger, questions that have to do with our lives. Something like a job change you're considering, or whether or not to have kids or to get a dog. Maybe you want to start a new health habit like an exercise program, or learn a new language, or build some new friendships. Those of us with perfectionist tendencies can be high achievers, but we can also frequently find ourselves staying stuck, spinning our wheels in indecision. And I see this more commonly the farther and farther we get into our perfectionist habits. This can result in more problems than we realize. Certainly, time moves forward and the decision goes unmade, which can have consequences. But for many of the physicians I encounter, there is a clear emotional and energetic drain that is happening with the indecision going on. And that is causing far more problems than most of us tend to admit. This can look like random worry thoughts that pop up unannounced in your brain, or fatigue because you see something related to the decision that's lingering on your to-do list day after day, week after week, and you feel gross looking at it over and over again, thinking that you haven't moved forward with it. We can start to feel shame or embarrassment that we haven't taken action, haven't made a decision, especially if we have told other people that we're considering something new. So why don't we take action? For most people, I find that it comes down to fear. Fear of making the wrong choice, fear of not having enough information, fear of crossing a threshold and not being able to change your mind. If you think that sounds familiar, let's check in on each of these and see where you might be getting stuck. So the first that we'll mention is the fear of making the wrong choice. I noticed that one of my kids who tends to struggle more with perfectionism can get really caught up in indecision, especially with something that I would consider not that important. So say, for example, if we go to the bakery and he gets to pick out a treat, he will often, look at the case and go back and forth. And I can see in his mind that he thinks that there is a best choice that there is something in there that he needs to decide, because there is one right choice, one right decision that is clearly better than the other. And of course, in that circumstance, I can see for him, knowing his taste, that there are many choices that he would be perfectly satisfied with. But he's getting stuck because he thinks there's a good choice, the right choice, I should say. And this kind of thinking pops up for many of us over and over again. And there's an underlying thought error that there is a right choice for most decisions. Movies would have us believe that there is often one right choice. And sometimes with a really extreme example, I'm thinking of the third Indiana Jones movie where, drinking from the wrong cup leads to an immediate and gruesome death. If you know, you know. But with most choices that we make in our lives, including on, whether or not to move on to a new job, or, whether or not to start a family, or when the right time is to start a family, or what the right number of children or pets are, most of the time there is no one right choice. There are different choices. Each choice may come with its own, pros and cons, but often I find that people are getting stuck believing that they need to find the right choice. Otherwise, they aren't going to be able to move forward, and they won't be happy with their decision. The next fear where people get stuck is the fear of not having enough information. And this is definitely an area that's highly influenced by our training as physicians. We've been trained to fear having inadequate information, that might lead us to make a wrong treatment choice or a wrong diagnosis. And I'm not trying to suggest that we shouldn't be careful and we shouldn't do our due diligence. But many of the decisions that we make are, significantly less consequential than deciding whether or not somebody needs emergency surgery right now, or whether we need to call 911 and put them in the ambulance. With many decisions that we make, there's going to be a certain amount of information that's helpful, and beyond that, additional research usually won't help. When we're thinking about a new job, for example, sure, we need to review the contract and, be clear on what the expectations are. It would be helpful to talk to people who work in the department and, possibly some people who have left the role previously. But often I see physicians getting really stuck, wanting to ask questions over and over again, or, continuing to scan for other job opportunities, thinking that they are afraid of missing out on something else that's out there, right? They fear that if they aren't continuing to do extensive research, that they're going to make a wrong choice, when, again, much of the time, more research is not going to lead to a better decision, right? But the pursuit of knowledge, the pursuit of information can absolutely stop us in our tracks and contribute to that lack of making a decision, right? Including even, the decision to leave a job, right? If we are stuck indefinitely in research mode, then we are often not moving forward and we're just staying stuck for years. A third fear that I want to talk about is the fear of not being able to change your mind. For many of the decisions that we make, we have this imagined, perspective that the decision is like a one-way door, that once we walk through it, we can't open that door again and walk out. When in reality, most decisions that we make are really going to be, two-way doors, right? Where we can walk through, we can walk in, and if we find that we've made a decision that doesn't work, we can walk back out. I think for a lot of us, especially again, if you have people-pleasing tendencies, we don't want to face the yuckiness of changing our mind or the embarrassment of changing our mind, right? Say we are negotiating for a new house or a new job, right? And we reach, the middle of the negotiations and we decide this house, this job, it's just not right for me. Whether a new circumstance has popped up or, you've got a strong gut feeling that it's not right for you, many of us can struggle to appreciate that until that contract is signed, and even after it's signed, that it can't be undone. We don't want to risk inconveniencing other people often in order to make the decision work better for us. But, in that circumstance, we are believing that we can't or we shouldn't inconvenience other people in order to make a decision that is right for us. So I see this happen where people get stuck in situations that they don't want to be in because they're unwilling to inconvenience others. They're unwilling to admit that they have changed their mind and that a different decision is necessary for them, right? So another thought error. And so if we look at these fears, we can very easily see why we perseverate so much, sometimes even over small decisions, because we have been conditioned to fear many potential circumstances. Just consider a differential diagnosis, right? That, we often might read a note where, the patient came in and, they had abdominal pain and they felt better after they had a bowel movement. And yet you'll see in the note that, the urgent care doctor had to consider all the possibilities, including pancreatitis, including appendicitis, including this and this and this and this, right? They fear that if they have made a wrong diagnosis, that, if the patient returns, they will be sued. And of course, again, we could go into a big rabbit hole about the realities of medical liability, which isn't very helpful here, but we have been conditioned, as I said, to be fearful of so many things that we can get really stuck. We worry, what if I take a new job and I don't like it? What if I decide I'm not going to have kids, but later I want them? We can go back and forth in our mind and get stuck ping-ponging around in indecision, which leads to a lot of anxiety and exhaustion. So if we want to break free of this, we need to choose to confront some of these thought errors and start working on believing new things. That most decisions don't come with a right or a wrong, but there's an array of options. That more information isn't always better. We can choose to do our due diligence and then choose to make a decision. That the decisions that have a big impact on our lives are usually not one-way doors, and that inconveniencing others by changing our mind can be a good choice when the decision doesn't suit us anymore. The next time that you notice you are putting off a big decision, I advise you to carve out some time for yourself and decide, what do I need in order to make a decision? In other words, make a commitment to yourself that you will devote some time and attention to the decision. And that could be through journaling or discussing it with a friend. You're going to make a commitment, though, to move forward. Now, sometimes there are going to be circumstances where we need to wait in order to learn of a relevant outcome, or, to make sure that some significant event has come and gone. If your mother is going to be having surgery and you are her primary caregiver, right, it may not be the decision to, move out of state or something like that, right? There can be circumstances like that where you may need to delay a decision. In this case, make your best guess as to when you're going to know that it's okay to move forward, and mark your calendar for a date with yourself where you will come back to that decision. There aren't going to be a lot of circumstances where you need to delay it, but there will be some. And this is incredibly useful when you know that you can't decide now because of a certain circumstance, that there's some necessary pieces of the puzzle that need to be in place before you can make your decision. But you can also know that you're going to come back to it, that you've set aside time and set a reminder to make sure that you do come back to that information in the future. And let's, of course, wrap up the conversation by thinking about what happens when you take the time to do this work. You're going to create space to make a decision, and you're going to set a reminder. You know that whether you're going to make a decision later today or 2 months from now, you're going to be able to sit down with the information that you have and make a choice. It could be something to do with patient care or your career or your personal life, but outside of some kind of true emergency, regardless, you are making a commitment to a decision and you're clearing some mental space for it. And what happens then? Your subconscious mind can go to work in the background, helping to sort out information and sort out your opinions and, put them in the right place. Your worrying mind can take a break, letting go of the need to anxiously track, that a decision needs to be made, knowing that there's time and space set aside. You develop the skill of becoming far more effective with your decision-making process. No more getting stuck and overwhelmed and perseverating. Not to say that you will never feel any sense of overwhelm, but you're not going to get stuck in it. You're going to have so much less brain chatter. Imagine what that feels like. That's what I have for you today. So thank you as always for your time and attention. If you like what you hear, please leave me a review in iTunes and be sure to subscribe. I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you're celebrating winter holidays, enjoy, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.